Well, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, this meeting of the Special Committee for Public Infrastructure. And my name is Tony Emerson, representing District 4. If the other council members will please introduce themselves. All right, gentlemen, the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the October 27th meeting. Hold on. That is incorrect. This is the October 22nd. That'd be the September 28th meeting. And I think they were sent out last week. And I'd entertain a motion. Councilman Dober moves to approve. Councilman Lesser seconds that. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Next order of business is the fleet replacement program overview.
No, that's up here.
Okay. I'm sorry. It was my mistake. Okay. Okay. The next order of business is a resolution for the 2021 citywide sales tax project. Mr. Faust, I take it that's your.
Yes. The resolution that was included in your packets, if approved by the governing body, defines the specific citywide half-cent sales tax projects for 2021. The resolution does contain two exhibits. Exhibit A lists projects in excess of $250,000, which are funded in part or in whole with citywide half-cent sales tax, and those projects do include budget figures. Exhibit B lists projects of less than $250,000 and do not include budget figures. On the discussion, the budget or the projects that are listed in the resolution do fall under the various programs and were not specifically defined within the adopted CIP. Specific individual projects within the CIP that already have a defined budget and were approved when the CIP was adopted are not included in this resolution. And the resolution does contain three projects that we did not discuss at previous meetings. The first one is on line 121 of the resolution, and it's for Southwest Westport Drive from 17th to Wanamaker. That road is failing and in desperate need of reconstruction. The second one is line 162, and it's for concrete panel and joint repair citywide as needed. And line 165 is for asphalt patching on projects that are larger than can be handled by our operations division, and that would be citywide also. And so our recommended course of action would be to forward the attached resolution to the governing body with a recommendation of approval.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Faust. Any questions? Mr. Lesser? Okay. If there are no questions.
Would you like me to read through for the group what all the projects are?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. What we have in the resolution under Exhibit A, which are more than $250,000, we have the 2021 Surface Preservation Program, budget of $2 million. That will be a crack seal and or joint seal of our arterials constructed within the last 10 years across the city of Topeka with limited microsurfacing on those roads. And it will also be a crack seal and microsurface of residential streets. We'll finish what we started this year in West Topeka, and then we'll move back to Central Topeka. Also includes the 2021 Pavement Management, Rehabilitation, and Reconstruction Program at $8 million. Individual projects within that are Southwest 37th between Indiana and California. We actually hope to construct that this fall. but we included it on the list if the weather continues as it is today. South Topeka Boulevard between 45th and 49th, spring of 2021. Southeast Deer Creek Parkway between 6th and 10th. Southwest 30th, Southwest Hillcrest, and Southwest Twilight. Removing some asphalt curb and installing concrete and a mill and overlay. A multi-year project in the High Crest neighborhood. In 2021, it would be design with construction following in 22 and 23. Also in Central Highland Park, a multi-year project. In 2021, we would lay out a conceptual design and phasing for that project. Next item would be Prospect Hills, Southwest Danbury Lane and Southwest Yorkshire Road. It's a combined project with our water department. Southeast California between 6th and 10th is a combined project with our storm utility. Intersection reconstruction would be Southeast 6th and Golden, Southwest 6th and Jackson, Southwest 29th and Kansas Avenue. We also have a reconstruction project on Southwest 17th between I-470 and Wanamaker Road, Northwest Furman Road from Lower Silver Lake Road northward, roughly 1/4 of a mile. And we've added Southwest Westport Drive from Wanamaker to Southwest 17th. We also have our 2021 curb program at $1.25 million, our 2021 alley program at $500,000, and our 2021 ADA sidewalk program at $300,000. Those are all within the Exhibit A. Exhibit B for projects less than $250,000 includes, again, panel replacement and joint replacement on Southeast 6th between Golden and Rice Road. That will be a multi-year program. Failed partial depth concrete patch replacement on Southwest 29th between Fairlawn and Burlingame. And then the two new projects, panel and joint replacement at various locations across Topeka on our concrete streets. And then asphalt patching, again, various locations across Topeka. And the last one would be our 2021 sidewalk program with a budget of $100,000.
Thank you, Mr. Faust. Gentlemen, any questions? Looks like Mr. Lesser saying no questions. You're okay. If there are no questions, then I would entertain a motion. Yes. Okay. So, motion to approve by Councilman Dobler, second by Councilman Lesser. All in favor, say aye. 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 And all opposed, same sign. And you might have to raise your hand there, Mr. Lesser, because you're muted. So, is that? Hold on, unmute for a second, just so we can get you on the record as saying aye for the approval. Correct? Aye. For approval, correct? Okay. Aye. Can you hear me? Yes, I can. I just wanted to make sure we. Okay. It passes 3-0. Yes, I can. Yeah, we can now.
My apologies. My wife and I are in quarantine right now. I was not prepared for that, so I'm trying to do this call. So I apologize.
No problem.
I didn't really mean it anyway.
I didn't think you did. Okay, our next item is the alley program. So, Mr. Faust.
Okay. Just a kind of an update on our 2021 alley program. We use this funding to reconstruct alleys based on requests from constituents. The cost on each individual alley can vary depending upon conditions. An example would be proximity of structures and the location of utilities. So the current funding covers between 2 and 4 blocks annually. Funding was increased in 2021 from $250,000 to $500,000. In 2021, we proposed 3 alleys between Quincy and Kansas, from St. John's to Paramore, between Kansas and Jackson, from north to Laurent, and between Kansas and Jackson, north of that to Gordon. Those are the 3 projects in 2021. But one of the things we tried to do as part of our asset management program, engineering has been developing criteria to help prioritize future alley improvements. That's on page 2. And what we've developed a criteria for that prioritization, which weighs ADA, subsurface wastewater utility, trees, issues with grade or drainage, what the alley is occupied by, whether that's business or residential, the surface condition, and the maintenance by surface type. And each one is given a weighing factor. The more important the item is, the lower the number from 1 to 5. We set it up very similar to our PCI, so the lower the score that we have, the more that the alley needs to be closely monitored for maintenance and or reconstruction, as there may be significant issues such as drainage, or there may be high priority conditions such as business access. So, just an update on our alley program.
And Mr. Faust, thank you for that. I did have a question. When you say alley repair program, are those paved alleys or are these gravel alleys or both? Or
Right now, that's pretty much set up for our gravel and milling alleys. We have a lot of requests because people park on the alleys, and we have businesses that have access off of the alleys. A lot of the ones that we have that may have concrete approaches, but we have the gravel in between those approaches that can be in disrepair. So okay. Most of these programs are associated with that. On occasion, we do have, and I think actually in the Noto area, we have some alleys with some pavement that's completely failing, and so we're replacing that.
Okay. Councilman Dobler, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, Brian. What, in your list of criteria where it says wastewater utilities, the rest of it, what comprises that? Yes.
Well, one of the things we look at is a lot of the places where we have alleys, we have the sanitary sewer underneath. And so in a lot of those cases, that wastewater utility is actually fairly old, sometimes 100 plus years of age. The project costs go up significantly. We don't want to put a new alley pavement on top and have a 100-year-old sewer underneath. And so that's one of the things we look at, is there a sewer line underneath the alley.
So they replace sewer at the same time you're replacing the alley.
That'd be correct. If it's in need, when we would do an alley project, we'll look at the age. We'll see if they have the ability to actually camera or televise that sewer line to see the condition of it before we replace the pavement.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lesser?
No question.
Thank you. We do have a member of the public, Mr. Ledbetter, would like to ask a question. If you could please go to the,
Oh, sure.
I think they're just so they can hear you on the.
Is this a 4-minute timer? It's kidding.
2.
Okay. I didn't know we could speak at these, so yeah, I would have jumped in ahead of you on this 2021 CIP. On this alley program, how much money are we talking for next year being proposed? I don't have the documents in front of me.
In 2021, we've had 500,000.
500. I've had a question asked of me, actually by one of my sons, who's pretty bright. He's a CPA. He has been here pretty much all his life. He's been in a lot of different cities as he travels around the country. He has asked me, has the city of Topeka ever talked to any of these neighborhoods about getting rid of their alleys? Maybe paying people to abandon their alleys and so they can park out front again. And I know that that wouldn't work in every section of Topeka, but I've actually lived where there was an alley years ago, and I thought it was a detriment to the community because it seemed like that's how all the criminals at night broke into houses, or during the day they'd always go around the back and kick the doors in, and the alleys were kind of a way for them to maneuver without being seen by the police patrolling on the regular streets. So my question is, has anybody innovatively ever even talked about this with anybody in this, not just bureaucrats, I'm not talking, and that's not a bad word, I'm just saying, not just city employees, but actually talk to people, and I don't mean just one or two people, but actually talk to maybe a whole group of people about, are some of these alleys, would they be better not paved, and maybe do some kind of abandonment where, and please don't start arguing about it, just where they could actually maybe be paid to, instead of fix the alley, put their drives back in front and maybe come up with a whole nother way of not having an alley because of the cost. I've watched some of these alleys. It looks like they've spent hundreds of thousands just to redo part of a block. And I've often wondered, would those neighbors had been happy just to maybe take some money and not have that alley and maybe switch their parking to the front, et cetera. I know it's possible. I've heard of other cities doing it in certain areas, but I just wondered if that had ever even been discussed with neighbors, not city, but with neighbors.
And if I could respond, Mr. Ledbetter, on that, I did have that question as well, and one of the things I hadn't thought about in Highland Park, I think that you may be able to do that here and there. In talking though with Councilwoman Hiller, in her district, a lot of people have alleys have garages that they access from the alleys, and that'd be the issue there. But I think that's a valid point. I know in Highland Park, several places. My grandmother lived at 21st in Kentucky, and she didn't have a through alley. Where I grew up at 25th in Iowa, it's the alleys, the north end of the alley's blocked, so it's never been a through alley. And I guess, Mr. Faust, any thoughts about that?
Honestly, I've not talked to anyone about it. I do know that most of our alleys are used by our trash service, and we have a number of utilities that go down the alleys, whether that's sanitary or other underground or overhead. So that's going to cause some additional issues.
Okay, is this something we need this is not something we need a motion on, is it?
No, it's information.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Ledbetter, for your comments on that. And the next item is item 5, the curb and gutter program.
Just an update on our curb and gutter program. The curb and gutter program does replace failed curb and gutter identified by citizens and during mill and overlay or reconstruction projects. The current funding level for 2021 is $1.25 million per year. The city's road network does consist of roads with open ditches, asphalt curbs, stone curbs, brick curbs, metal curbs, and concrete curbs. The vast majority of curb and gutter in Topeka is concrete. And while concrete of all ages can fail, there was a time frame that the limestone aggregate was softer and absorbed more moisture. During freeze-thaw cycles, that aggregate failed with the resulting failure in the concrete. Failures typically appear at joints in the concrete and propagate outward. This type of failure is known as decracking and can be seen on the photograph that you have in your packet and up on the screen. It's not just curb related. If you have a concrete street, you'll typically see the joints start to blow out. It works from the joints and moves outward. Several years ago, the city worked almost exclusively on the oldest complaint first. This resulted in the contractor jumping around the city to replace small sections and was very inefficient. We were also releasing very large bid packages at the time in the ballpark of $500,000. There was a tendency for the contractor to use the curb work as fill-in work, and projects took all year or even into the following year to complete. About 3 years ago, the city started releasing multiple smaller bid packages between $50,000 and $100,000 with shorter time frames to complete. Instead of one large contract that dragged on, we had 7 to 10 smaller contracts that, while completed quicker, quite honestly was a nightmare for staff to maintain and manage. In 2019, the city began a more concentrated approach by looking at heat maps showing areas with significant number of curb service requests. While some were old and some were newer, the city felt that concentrating a contractor in a specific area was a better use of resources. Also in 2019 and 2020, the city began using this funding to help pay for curb replacement in our mill and overlay areas. As far as our selection criteria, the city starts by reviewing a heat map that identifies all service requests. Projects are selected where a significant number of service requests can be completed within a fairly small geographical area. It is also very likely that in these areas there are multiple curb failures that have not been reported, so these projects can grow exponentially once work starts. Also, where mill and overlay projects are planned, there's a high probability that there's a lot of curb that's in poor condition. When we replace curb, what we look for is water that is ponding, not draining, sections of curb that are missing or blown out, or failure at the joint where it is apparent, even if the concrete is still functioning, if it's still draining, but we realize that within a few years that it will actually blow out, we replace it at that time also. So, and that'd be the update on curb and gutter.
Questions, Mr. Dobler or Lesser? I had a couple questions, Mr. Faust. One was, and I think it's $1,250,000 a year, correct?
Correct.
You had mentioned that for a few years that you released a lot of smaller bid packages. You said between 50 and 100,000. And now you're going to a larger. I guess my question is, as from a cost standpoint, what is cheaper?
I think there's a couple things. When we combine a mill and overlay project with curb replacement, we can knock out a lot of curbs depending on the size that they can bring a machine in, and we can get some pretty good prices for that. It's also cheaper when we locate it in a specific geographic area, because the way we were doing it, I have a contractor work on 70 feet of curb, in one quadrant, and then do 70 feet and jump all around town. And so that was a real inefficient use of his crews. And so the way we have it now, in trying to define a localized area, we feel we get better prices for that. As far as bid packages, when we were doing the $500,000 bid packages, we'd actually get pretty good prices, but it dragged on and on. And like I said, they kind of appeared to be using it as fill-in work. When they weren't working on another project, they'd come and knock out work for a week, knock out some curb and disappear again. And they'd come back 2 weeks later and do some more curb.
Sure.
And it just dragged on and on. The nice thing about the smaller packages, we put pretty tight time frames, 30 days or 45 days on it. That forced them to get done, otherwise liquidated damages would kick in. So, but having 7 different contractors or 10 contractors working about the same time in different areas around town with all the other projects going on became somewhat of a logistical nightmare for staff.
And so now the way it's done, so you're no longer doing the smaller contracts, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Ledbetter, yeah, if you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I don't have these documents in front of me, and they're not being put up anywhere where I can read them. So I'm having to listen and then ask questions. Couple questions. Okay, so as I understand it, the smaller contractors got a lot done, but now you've gone back to the bigger contractors, and yet it drags out longer. I don't understand how you solved a problem by going back to the other process. Could you explain that?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is when we're working in a concentrated area, we can keep better tabs on the contractor. We're actually doing better as far as estimating the time to complete the projects. And so we're putting tighter time frames on all of our contractors, no matter what the project is, to make sure they get time done in a timely fashion. I think the staff as well as citizens are a little frustrated when contractors show up, work for a week, and then disappear for 2 or 3 and come back and work for a week. And so we've adjusted our time frames to try to keep them in town.
Yeah, I'm very familiar that people get frustrated with that, and I always recommend liquidated damages and timeframes be part of a contract. My next question is any of this funded by stormwater? Because I see you call this curb and gutter program. Is this partly stormwater money, or is this, where does this money come from?
This program is funded out of the citywide half-cent sales tax.
Okay, so that's not that. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Mr. Faust. The next item is the ADA ramp program, which, back to you.
Our ADA ramp program does provide for maintenance and installation of accessible ramps and curb cuts at intersections throughout the city in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The city currently has approximately 8,000 ramps across the city with approximately 1,200 more locations needed. Construction costs vary depending on the surrounding conditions, the grade, the right-of-way availability, utilities, etc. But the current funding level of $300,000 per year does equate to between 100 and 150 ramps being replaced each year. The area worked is typically in the same general area as our infill sidewalk program. Staff does hold a small amount of funding back to address individual ramp requests across the city that come in each year. Examples of where ramps are needed, we have some pictures on the screen. Where sidewalks end at raised curb and there's a sidewalk across the street. The first photograph shows a brand new ADA compliant ramp directing someone to a raised median. The second one where there are ramps but there are no detectable warning devices. The second one shows a picture of 2 nice ramps that are compliant in every way except they do not have the truncated domes. And the third one is where there is a ramp or warning device, but it is broken or out of compliance with ADA. So just a little bit of an update on our ADA program.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, our next item is a... Sure. Thank you. You're welcome.
You said committee, so I'm not part of the committee, but hey, I have a question on this. I think these have been going on for probably, since the 90s. I think that's the first time I saw one done in Oakland with, in my dad's area when he was still alive. So how many years have we been doing these? Approximately?
The funding from the citywide sales tax started in 2009.
Okay.
We would have started before that on replacement.
Oh, yeah. How long has this program been going on without city sales tax?
I mean, ADA, I believe, was officially adopted probably in 92. One of the challenges that came in initially, there was no, how would I say, guidance associated with detectable warnings. And so what you'll see is, in that one example, you'll see someone that painted the concrete red. You'll see some ADA ramps that have actually lines grooved in them, like the rumble sticks on the side of the road. And so at some point, probably in the late 90s, at some time frame in there, they came out with a detectable truncated domes. And so that's been occurring since then.
And you're referring to the raised bumps on them?
Correct.
Okay. For the layman out here that might not know what you're talking about. Okay. So I have a follow-up question, and this is interesting. It's in front of me because I had a question a few months ago. I've been asked to pay a little bit of attention, actually quite a bit, to the viaduct down here that sheds concrete underneath it quite a few times during the month, the Poe Quincy Viaduct. And I noticed that this year, it was either this year or last year, but I think it was this year, and I'm positive it was this year. I took pictures of it. We replaced some of the ADA sidewalks underneath that bridge, even though it appeared to me, I'm not aware anybody even uses those sidewalks under that viaduct. How are these decided by priority as to whether it's a populated area or an unpopulated area when you choose to do these?
Well, what I would say is that, as I mentioned, that the areas that we typically work are in the areas where we have the infill sidewalk program. And that area is defined through our planning and development services. And we do hold some money back when we do get requests for sidewalks or ADA ramps in particular areas. We have funding for that too. So if someone would request one that they need access to get from one place to another, then we'll look at putting one in.
Well, I'm not aware of any infill sidewalk projects being done in that area. I didn't see any new concrete. So that's why I was questioning why you would do that in such an area over an area that may have a lot more population or may need them.
Well, I will check on that one.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next item, I believe, is yours also, Mr. Faust, the 50/50 sidewalk program.
Okay, another half-cent sales tax funded project it's actually defined in the CIP as Sidewalk Repair Program. It's commonly referred to as the 50/50 sidewalk program. Currently, the city funds a sidewalk program that repairs existing deteriorated sidewalks at various locations throughout the city. The program provides matching funds to allow residential properties to repair sidewalks that are out of compliance with current codes. Current funding is $100,000 per year. The current process on this is engineering bids out just general sidewalk panel replacement at the beginning of each year. When a complaint comes in about a sidewalk, city staff reviews the sidewalk for broken sections or trip hazards. The property owner is notified in writing of the issues and told about the 50/50 program. If they elect to participate in the program, engineering provides a detailed cost based on bid prices. Once the city receives payment for 50% of the cost, their name is put on a list. Once we have 5 to 7 locations where payment is made, we notify the contractor and sections of sidewalk are replaced. There are several pros and cons with this approach. Residents are only responsible for 50% of the cost up front. It can be a month or more between payment and the city having enough work to release a contractor. Contractor will be working in many different locations, so they may remove the sidewalk and form up a new section, but not place concrete until all the different areas are ready to pour. And any issues with the contractor, such as reseeding or ruts or trash or whatever, come back to the city. We are proposing a different process for 2021. The city would respond to complaints as before and notify the property owner of issues and are told about the 50/50 program. The city notifies the owner in writing how much the city will cover based on bid prices for similar sidewalk projects. The property owner would hire their own contractor, the city would inspect the work, and the property owner would pay 100% for the repair. Once the city did receive a copy of a paid invoice, we would reimburse the property owner for half the cost based on our written estimate. Again, pros and cons, the sidewalk may be repaired much more timely as the contractor is working for just that one property owner. Homeowners could address any problems directly with the contractor. Much less time would be needed by city staff dealing with bidding, correspondence, receiving funds, Complaints on the waiting list, busy contractors not being responsive. However, the downside would be the homeowner would be required to pay 100% upfront and then be reimbursed for city match. And this could create hardships for those experiencing economic hardships. So with that, staff would like to utilize the proposed process starting in 2021, unless the committee feels that the current process should be maintained.
Councilman Dobler, go ahead.
Thank you. Brian, what's the likelihood homeowners get the price from the contractor or close to the price that the city gives?
In all likelihood, it's probably going to be a higher price.
I didn't quite hear that.
The homeowner's probably going to get a higher a bid price.
But the city's 50% is going to be based on what they will pay, based on the bids they get from the contractor on an annual basis.
Well, we were kind of looking at it, I mean, there's two ways. One is we pay 50% of whatever their contractor charges them, or we pay 50% of what the current bid prices we see are. And so it would be either of those options.
I'm just wondering if there's something kind of a compromise. I guess my concern is generally prices, contractors, because it's more of a volume business. When a homeowner goes out, it's probably going to be quite a bit more. I wonder if there's some kind of compromise where the city can pre-qualify contractors, have a list of contractors. Typically do that kind of work or license, so on, for the homeowner to choose from. And I guess I'd be in favor of it if the city will pay half of it actually costs the homeowner.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the parts of town where sidewalks need to be repaired, the ability of homeowners to pay for those repairs are less than newer parts of town. So I'd be concerned about this process driving the cost up to the homeowner. I do like the part where the homeowner's responsible for it. If it's not getting accomplished in time, they complain to the contractor. That seems like a good way to handle. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser, any questions? You're muted. You are muted. I'm glad you're muted now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be my only concern would be the loss on this pricing that they goes back on the homeowner as well as the city. Right? The only concern other thing I have with that is both price.
Yeah, my kind of to echo what Councilman Lesser said. I know I get a lot of calls. People are just trying to get a contractor to come out and look at a project. And, frankly, if you're a homeowner, calling a guy that does concrete, it's very hard to get them out if they have, you have 2 panels of sidewalk. So that's, yeah, if there was some sort of way the city could have a pre-approved list and maybe even pre-negotiated pricing, and I don't know if that's possible to do or not. I do really appreciate that you guys are trying to innovate and look at ways to make this both faster and more responsive while holding the line on cost. But I don't know, just as laid out right now, I would totally support that. But and I was going to ask both on this and earlier we talked about the curb and gutter. The city has, and maybe this is utilities that does the under 25,000 repairs. The city has, they get, as you're probably aware, Mr. Faust, but just for everyone else's information, the city bids out on a annual basis, and sometimes there's opportunities for renewal, an under $25,000 repair. And as I understand it, we don't do that kind of work, but as I understand it, various contractors, they give their unit prices for various types of work. And then when a project comes up, I believe Mr. Copley and his staff or someone on his staff goes through and determines who would be the lowest price based on the combination of units on that particular site, and then awards it to that contractor if they have the, okay, Mr. Copley is nodding. And so I wonder sometimes if there's not some way that other units, engineering can maybe piggyback on that and use those same contractors or the same pricing. Because sometimes it just seems we have people in our contract to do something for a good price, but maybe it can't be accessed, or maybe one department doesn't know that that's available. But I don't know if there would be any prohibition to using that, another department using that same pricing. I know when we bid stuff with the state, we can check a box on there that other units, other subdivisions, state government can use our pricing if they want. So that might be something to look into.
We'll do some more research on this and look at the pre-qualification and see if we can negotiate prices that would be good for a quarter or a year.
Okay. Okay, the next item is the draft agenda for the November meeting. And I don't have anything on that. Is that correct?
This one right here. That's that one.
Oh, okay.
Hold it up to, you make it bigger.
This looks like we're going to look at the fleet replacement program. That looks like that's the main thing, and I guess maybe we'll be discussing the 50/50 sidewalk at that time as well, maybe?
Yeah, we can bring that back.
Okay. Any questions from the committee or comments?
Looks like a good agenda.
Can you set a date for that?
I just once again apologize for my technical.
No problem. One thing we do need to decide is the date for that November meeting. Obviously, we have Thanksgiving there, which I believe is the 26th, so probably not that week. I don't know what works for staff.
What's going to be? The big one's going to be, Hannah's going to be on the fleet.
The week, which would be the week of the, yeah. Okay.
There's a committee meeting already on the 16th for public health and safety.
Would it make sense, though, to come in right after that or an hour or two after that? Just
That
so.
one's from 3 to 5. 3 to 5 is what.
How about doing it before that? I was thinking then staff wouldn't have to reset the room and.
Right. Look at doing it.
That's on the 16th?
16th. This room was booked for new hire training, orientation or whatever. And so the public health and safety meeting will be over at the law enforcement center, and I have to check to see if earlier would be, but I can look and see.
Well, I hate to do that because a lot of the staff that comes here just comes from upstairs, and I hate everyone to waste a lot of time going over there. So, what about on the 17th? We do have a council meeting that night, so
3 to 5, and then council meeting.
I'd have to wear a tie to the meeting then. But gentlemen, how does the 17th work for you guys? Tuesday the 17th. Okay, it works. Mr. Lesser, 3 to 5. Could we go 2 to 4? Would that 2 to 4 on the 17th? Okay.
I would rather go 3 to 5 so we can go straight to council meeting.
Okay, that's fine. 3 to 5 on November 17th then. Okay. Okay, the next item says items from staff.
Right, and item number 9, we have items from staff. The city did hold its 2022 to 2031 CIP internal kickoff meeting last week. And Jessica, do you want to have us put up the calendar?
Mr. Wade, go ahead.
Hi, Steve Wade with Finance. We've got a tentative schedule set up depending on the needs and requirements of this committee for next year. What we have planned is a projects due back in early December, December the 11th, giving us the ability to have a conversation with the city manager on the 6th, tentatively the 6th of January. What we would like to do is schedule a session with the governing body on or approximately the 19th of January, just to go over the overall finances. And we're hoping to be able to meet with this committee prior to that. Not knowing what your calendar is for January, we tentatively have on here hoping to do just like you did for November, having a meeting on that same day on the 19th, that would allow you to review the items and give a tentative thumbs up, thumbs down. Once we get through that, we would go back to the CIP committee with your input. We hope to have a workshop with the governing body on or approximate the 6th of February. Last year it was held on a Saturday. Again, this depends on your input.
Any questions, Mr. Dover or Mr. Lesser?
No, sir.
Okay.
Jessica, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so on the 19th, would hopefully have, or somewhere around that, have this committee meet to review the projects that were impacted by the change last year. And then the 19th, in terms of the governing body discussion, that's much broader. That's just reintroducing the CIP, what the process is, not necessarily on a project basis. And so then we would have about a week and a half, depending on what the committee decided, in terms of putting together a book. We would start, pulling all together. It's fairly time intensive. So I guess the feedback that would be helpful. Our understanding is that this committee wants to review all of those projects identified and then provide a recommendation to the governing body as a whole. Does that recommendation, is the intention to have that go before we discuss overall CIP, like in the budget, in the CIP workshop and all of that? Or will the recommendation just be included in the overall capital that is sent to the governing body as a whole? Does that make sense? But do you want feedback from the governing body, or do you put in your recommendation?
I don't know who wants to answer that. I guess I'll take a stab at it here. And that I think the only thing this committee is looking into are only things that are CIBs that are already have budgets. I think that's correct. So and I guess something I've always kind of been puzzled every year when we do the capital improvement project, when we go through that process, really the only things that should change are things in the out years, correct? Because the things in the next 3 years have already been, well, at that point it'll be the next 2 years, have already been approved. So really we're only adding 1 year, or is it we do 5 years now in CIB, is it? Is it we do 5 and 3? Okay, so 3 and 7. So I'm always a little bit at a loss to understand why we every year relook at the things that already have CIBs, just simply because they're already approved. And I never know why year after year we keep seeing the same ones when they're already approved. And that's not a criticism of you guys. It's just I've always wondered why we do that, I guess. But I thought when Councilman Dobler, well, you know what? Councilman Dobler can answer this better than I can, so please take it away.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think the intent was not to mass approve a lot of projects at the same time, because things that get approved do then whatever early in the year, a year or two later when the projects start, everybody's forgotten about it. So, I think the idea is exactly what we're doing right now. We're approving 2021 projects, and they're kind of front and center. So I don't know that this committee, the end of this, really approve anything that's in the CIP. Approve those projects as they come into the cycle, and sign and right away and all that. I don't know if that answers the question, Jessica. That was my that was council.
Okay. We'll look at the calendar again, not in terms of the CIP process, but in terms of the project planning. I think our understanding was that the 21 was different in the process just because of the infrastructure committee being added, but that infrastructure committee would be looking at the projects because it'll be the CIP you'll be looking at will be
2031. 2031.
So our understanding was that you would be looking at those in advance. So, because like the projects themselves, when you're talking about roads or curbs, the total funding doesn't typically change a great deal. So like those, we could have that conversation later. But if there was 8 projects that the committee didn't want to go forward, maybe we need to ask some specific guidance on those at the January meeting on whether those should be included.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider is just a bit of a process and evolution. So to begin with, assuming that the infrastructure committee gets extended, there is a permanent committee or maybe for another year or whatever. I think part of the process is to figure out what makes the most sense, both for staff and the council. Part of the goal and what I think we're really seeing right now is a lot of information on infrastructure comes out every meeting. You get a lot of background. The public gets a lot of background. It's interesting. Want to watch the meetings. I know we're getting questions from the press and others. So makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. So maybe we just evolve this process, okay, this year and, you know, on ahead of that, just to see what makes the most sense. What projects do we need to pay more attention to? What projects can get approved in the CIP really don't pay any more attention to them, those sorts of things. Just my thoughts.
We'll meet with Brian and Hannah before your guys' next meeting in November. And if there's anything that stands out in terms of the process that we need feedback on, we'll share it then. And then receive the project in December. We will then also have a good idea if there's something outside of the normal program that we'll be able to give you hopefully some warning about before you see it on January on or about the 9th. But okay, that does.
Thank you, Ms. Lamondola. We do have one person who'd like to make a comment on this. Mr. Ledbetter?
Thank you. As I said, I was not given advanced copies of the discussion today. And so what we might do in future meetings is have extra copies available for the public. I would probably have commented on some of those CIP projects, but they went by in a blur and I didn't even know we could comment on them. So when are these going to be approved before they go to the council by your committee?
So
Or you've already approved them?
we approved them, but that's just a recommendation from the committee. They'll now go to the full council.
When will they go to the council?
That is a great question. Mr. City Manager?
In December? Okay. Well, before that happens, maybe I'll get that list and I'll email comments.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and I will, and I guess if I can ask Ms. Toyne, will this information be posted somewhere on the website?
I usually attach it to like approved minutes,
Okay.
but I just put on public. I assume it would be, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Put it on the website.
One of the things I appreciate these meetings, as long as the public's informed and, you know, we attempt to be. I think we need a lot more scrutiny of our projects, and I think that needs to be absolutely annually, maybe quarterly, maybe per approval of each project, like we used to do. I'm kind of shocked at some of the stuff I've seen built in the last couple of years that I don't think the council would have approved if it had been in front of you, but that's my speculation. I certainly would have opposed some of the projects I've seen, but we had no input because they were just supposedly voted on 5 years ago, and now we're just supposed to expect that. I don't think that's due diligence, and I don't think that's good oversight of the council. So I've said that on the record before, but I'm glad for this opportunity to speak. Thank you for letting me have some input here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Any final comments from Mr. Dobler? Oh, Mr. Lesser? All right. Staff? All right. Well, seeing nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.